Salve omnes. This is Mr. Hodges, and I am not there today because I have a sick wife and child at home that I am tending to. So while I am gone, you guys are going to need to grab a Latin preposition note sheet from one of the top shelves, probably the top shelf by the door, and grab it, pause this, go grab it, come when you're ready, come back, sit down with a pencil, and be ready to fill in some information. We're going to be talking about Latin prepositions today. We talked about these on Monday. They're not very difficult, but in Latin there are some specifics that you need to know about. Specifically, these two things that you've never heard before, SID space and the ablative case. I wonder what that means. Let's find out. Okay. So, first question at the top. What is the function of a prepositional phrase within a sentence? What is a preposition? A preposition is a word that shows a relationship between two things within a sentence. It's combined with a noun to create a prepositional phrase. The noun that is combined with the preposition is known as the object of the preposition. So prepositions are these little words that show relationships or where something is in space or time. So like by, or to, or at, of, from, out of, at, before, on, inside, outside, within, without, above, below, next to. Any of these words are all prepositions. And they all need to have a second part to them. Above what? Well, above the tree. If you say above the tree in that prepositional phrase, you have your preposition above, and the tree is your object of the preposition. You need those two things, and you need to know, you need to be familiar with that terminology of preposition and object of the preposition and the difference. So the preposition is the little word that tells you where or when something is, or its relation to other things, and the object of the preposition is the big word that follows it. Alright, so let's find the prepositional phrases in here. We have the number one, the man fell asleep in the car. Number two, Willie Nelson was defeated by the police. Number three, before my court date, I will flee the country. And number four, my cat sleeps under the cars of my neighbors. Okay? So this first one, the man fell asleep. Where did he do that? In, that's your preposition, is in. And the car is your object of the preposition. Those in the car comes together to make your prepositional phrase. Willie Nelson was defeated by the police. By is your preposition here. The police is your object of the preposition. So by the police comes together to be your prepositional phrase. Okay? Before my court date, I will flee the country. In this case, the preposition comes at the beginning of the sentence, before my court date. So before is your preposition, and my court date is the object of that preposition, and before my court date comes together to be your prepositional phrase. Number four, my cat sleeps under the cars of my neighbors. Well, this one's a double whammy. We actually have two prepositional phrases in here. Under the cars is one of them. Under the cars, and of my neighbors is the other. Under is the preposition here, and the cars is its object. So under the cars is one prepositional phrase. Of my neighbors, of being the preposition, and my neighbors is the object of the preposition. That comes together to make your second prepositional phrase. So now we know what prepositional phrases look like in English, and remember, oh yeah, I learned that in 3rd grade. That's really easy. I hope that's what you're thinking, because they are. And they're really not that bad in Latin either. Just like in English, there are dozens and dozens of different prepositions that get used all the time, and you really, honestly, you just translate them straight up in the same, like word order is not weird with prepositional phrases. Actually, it's almost more similar to English than other parts of Latin. There's just one weird thing about this, and that there are two different groups of prepositions. One really small group called the SID space prepositions, and then the really, really big group called non-SID space prepositions. And we'll talk about the difference of them in a second. First, we're going to talk about SID space prepositions. SID space is a mnemonic device for you to remember 7 prepositions. These prepositions are very common, and they follow their own little set of rules. Every other preposition outside of these, and I said 7, I mean 8, outside of these prepositions here, follow a different set of rules. So it's important to remember these, and that's why we call them SID space, so you can. So, you're going to want to write these down. The first S in SID stands for sine. Sine means without. The I stands for in. Notice these two asterisks here? We'll come back to that in a little bit. In means in or on. De means about or concerning or down from. S, the S in space, stands for sub, notice the asterisks, and that means under or below. Pro means for, instead of, in return for. It can also mean in front of. Ab or a means away from. Cum, the C, means with. And X or e means out from. A lot of these we already know. We've seen in, we've seen sub, we've seen ab, and we've seen cum and X. All of these will be on your both vocab quizzes for this stage. They need to be memorized. Okay. So the thing that makes SID space prepositions their quirk is that they're objects. So if I said without the cat, for example, the cat would be the object of that preposition. Without would be its preposition. So without the cat. Sine would mean without, and the word for cat, feles, well, the object of a SID space preposition is in the ablative case. And so we need to learn a new case just for this. Here are just the endings for the ablative. On the next page, you will have all the endings for all cases as we know them now. We are learning the ablative case is the fourth of the 5 cases that we're learning this year. And so we're almost done. Objects of the preposition are the nouns that follow SID space prepositions, and if they follow a SID space preposition, then they are going to be ablative in Latin. So the ablative ending for the first declension is long A, and this is the only macron that I care about. So whenever you write an A, the first declension ablative, make sure you have the line over that ending. And then is. First declension singular ending is a, and the plural is is. Second declension singular ending is o. Second declension ablative plural ending is is. You'll notice that this is actually very similar to the dative for the second declension. And third declension ablative singular is e, and its plural is ibus. So it goes a, is, o, is, e, ibus. These will need to be memorized for the test. Here they are with all of them, all the endings, and I'm going to keep my mouse still so you can see this. There we go. Alright, so the order that we have now is nominative, dative, accusative, and ablative. The only thing we have left to add is the genitive, and that'll be in a couple of weeks. So our first declension endings are a, I, and a. And then the plurals are I, is, us, and is. For the second declension, it goes us, o, o. And then the plurals are e, is, os, is. Lastly, the third declension singulars are bla, e, m, e. And then the plurals are s, ibus, s, ibus. There's a little pattern there. You'll see down here at the bottom, the ablative is the new one, and that's kind of in the golden color. Ablatives on their own, which you'll see in Latin too, if you see an ablative case noun on its own, it'll be by or with that thing. But that's for a later date. For now, the only place we'll see ablatives are in the object of SID space prepositions. So if it's the object of sine, in, de, sub, pro, ab, cum, or ex, then you'll see an ablative. All the other ones are non-SID space prepositions. We'll skip. Oh, what? Oh. You know what? I guess we can't skip all that. We'll talk about non-SID space prepositions in a second. All right. So, in order to decline a Latin noun, we're about to practice the ablative case a little bit. So here's just a reminder. You're going to need to find the stem of the noun before adding on your ablative ending. The stem is basically just the part of the word that you'll add your different ending onto. And we've done this quite a bit. You're going to follow the formula. You're going to be given 2 principal parts of the noun. You're going to take that second principal part and you're going to cut off the accusative ending, and that will be your stem. Then you will add the proper ablative singular or ablative plural ending onto the new stem. So, say I'm given servus servum, meaning slave, and I am given the preposition sine. So I want to say without the slave. Okay, well I'll put sine in there because that is sine is just the preposition that never changes. Servus, though, servus servum, I can tell by the um in the accusative that this is a second declension noun, so I need to make it ablative. And I remember from copying this down, of course it gets blocked, that O is my second declension ablative singular ending. So I'm going to take the UM off, and I am going to have my stem, which is SERV, and I'm going to add O onto it to get servo. So if I want to say without the slave, I will say sine servo. This is my SID space preposition. This is my ablative noun. So on these examples here, I want you to say in the dining room, in the forum, under the dog, with Grumio, and with Metella. These are all different declensions. So first you got to figure out the declension of these words, and then you got to figure out how to make them ablative, because these are all SID space prepositions. Okay, you can do ablative singular or plural. It's up to you. On the next page, if you pause it now, so you'll have time to work on it on your note sheet, and hit play when you're ready. Okay. So, intraclinium will be intraclinio. Make it ablative singular, intraclinio. Inforum turns into inforo, in the forum. Sub turns into subcane, because canis is third declension. It'll have an E ending. Cum is cum plus grumio is cum grumione, because you take that second principal part, cut off the ending, and you replace it with the ablative singular E. That'll be with grumio. And then with Metella, it'll be cum Metella, and I really need that thing to go away. And notice that the A has the long mark over it, because Metella is a first declension noun, and first declension nouns, the ablative singular ending is A with a line over it. It's the only line I care about. All right. Even simpler. Every preposition that is not sine, in, de, sub, pro, ab, cum, or ex are called non-SID space prepositions. That's literally everything else. There are hundreds of them. And the only difference is that all non-SID space prepositions, their objects aren't ablative. They're going to be accusative. Some of the most common ones that we've seen so far are non-SID space prepositions we've seen so far are trans for across, prope for near, ad, which means to, not to be confused with ab, circum, which means around, and super, which means above. Lastly, there are two hybrid prepositions. You may have noticed back in the SID space one, I pointed out that in and sub had two asterisks next to their name. And this is because they are both SID space and non-SID space prepositions. If the object of in or sub are in the accusative case, then that implies that there is motion. So, for example, with the word in down here, God, I have to wait for that to go away. So, in the first example, I have in horto. In horto. Horto is the ablative form of hortum, garden. So, in horto means in the garden. But since in is a hybrid, if I say in hortum, and you do hortum in the accusative case, then that changes the translation from in the garden, in horto, to into the garden, in hortum. Making that object accusative changes the meaning of the word in. Okay. So lastly, this is your turn. You are going to combine 3 of the following prepositions with 3 of the following nouns. You'll notice I have all the SID spaces up here, and I have some of the more common non-SID spaces right here. You'll see you have a bunch of different options over here in terms of nouns, and you are just basically going to choose three different words from over here and combine them with 3 different words from over here to create a total of 3 prepositional phrases. So you could say, without the peacock, sub sine pavone. Or you could say, above the wine, super vinum. You have a lot of different options that you can do. Just make sure if it's SID space, one of these up here, then your object over here will be in the ablative case. If it's non-SID space, then these will be accusative. And that's basically it. Now, I only have about 30 seconds left. Today, I would like for you guys to, after you have these notes down, to do one of 2 things. Practice your vocabulary for Friday using the Quizlet right here, or go to the Stage 14 Practice Quizzes folder and complete any of these preposition. You guys will see a little bit more or fewer than are on here, but you'll see prepositions 1, prepositions 2, SID space definitions and SID space preps. All of those need to be done.